You're listening to Big World Network.
Phineas Frakture and the Princess of Atlantis, Episode 4, written by Joseph Gatch, read by Michael Young.
Atlantis? Atlantis is a myth, an ancient fairy tale,
William said as he pulled on one of the tentacles of the dead Kraken man's head. He forced himself not to throw up and wiped his hand on his trouser leg. "It is very much real," replied Ashira. "We have lived beneath the waves for over a millennia, charting a path separate from the world above, dedicating ourselves to the pursuit of knowledge, while those above pursued war. We have lived in peace from the time the city was taken below the ocean, but recently these creatures have invaded our city and subjugated us. I am afraid that you have chosen to visit us during a dark time in our existence." "We did not choose to visit," said Abigail. "The last thing I remember was being dragged into the water by an air kraken. We don't even know how we got here." "I am sure that my ministers can answer your questions. Why don't you come with me, and we will see if we can straighten out your dilemma."
"Sounds good to me," said William. "Will there be food?"
He took a step closer to Ashira, and she suddenly flinched backwards, with a feral look on her face. "You must stay," she said harshly. "Nourishment will be brought to you in your quarters." William looked surprised and hurt by this sudden hostility.
"Was it—"
Phineas pulled him back a few steps and noticed that Ashira began to relax. "Look," he said in a lowered tone, "I don't know what's going on here, but for the time being, why don't you stay here and see to Abigail's arm? She looks like she could use some mending. I'll go to these ministers so we can get out of here as soon as possible."
"All right," William said dejectedly. "Can we at least have a first aid kit sent with the food as well?"
he asked the princess. "Your needs will be met," she replied with all manner of hostility gone from her voice. "I'll be back momentarily," Phineas said. Then, turning to Abigail, "Go get yourself fixed up." "Fine," Abigail replied hesitantly. "Play nice, but not too nice. And don't go starting any wars or anything." "Don't worry. It's me we're talking about. What could possibly go wrong?" Phineas threw the last comment over his shoulder as Ashira led him away. Abigail arched an eyebrow in mock Phineas style. "With you? What couldn't?" Phineas walked the corridor in silence, observing the architecture of the underwater construct. Finally, he spoke up about what had previously occurred. "Why were you so rude to my friends back there? They just want to get out of here." "Your male friend," Ashira started. "William." "Yes, William. He has the taint. He is not welcome in our city." "The taint? What are you talking about?" "I could sense it as he came close, just as I can sense it with the Kraken men. His blood is corrupt, and he is a dangerous being. He should be disposed of." "That is a very harsh perspective," said Phineas. "William is a friend, and I wouldn't see him come to harm." "Then you are a fool. He will turn on you." Phineas mulled her words over in his head. He had made no progress in finding a way to rid William of his dolomite malady, and though he would say otherwise, William had begun to show signs of rising aggression, irritability, and memory loss. Phineas kept his suspicions to himself, especially from Abigail and Mrs. Popkiss. There were a few nights where he had been summoned to William's apartment, where the police had found William in a state of disarray, looking as if he had been in altercations. He feared that time was running out for his friend, and Ashira's reaction to William reinforced his fears. They finally came to a set of large doors, which opened before them without a touch. Phineas was still marveling at how this happened, when Ashira spoke up and he realized that they were no longer alone. "Another one of the Kraken men has breached the sanctuary," Ashira stated in an authoritative tone. "This surface man saved my life as it tried to abduct me." One of the men in the room, dressed in a white robe similar to the other four present, replied, "Has Nemo returned then?" Ashira pushed Phineas forward, much to his displeasure at being wrenched from his study of the room. "Nemo?" Phineas asked. "I have no idea who that is. Is he another fish person?"
"If you're not of Nemo's crew, then who are you?" asked another one of the ministers. "The name is Frakture. Professor Phineas Frakture of New York. My friends and I were pulled under water by a giant fornicating air kraken, which sounds as unpleasant as it was." "You're a scholar, then?" asked a third. "Yes, very scholarly, and I have a lecture to give in London in a few days' time, so if you could allow us a way out of here, we would be most grateful." Phineas tried to add a smile, but just ended up looking like he had bitten his tongue. "You are free to leave. However, we are in need of outside assistance," stated the first minister. Ashira put her hand on Phineas's shoulder, sending a not-too-unpleasant shiver down his spine. He felt elated to just be around the woman, a phenomenon that he felt demanded further study. "Allow me to explain," she said. "Our kingdom has been overtaken by these creatures. As I said, we have lived in peace for ages. We were taken unaware by these Kraken men when they first arrived, thinking that they were a new and wonderful species. They quickly took over with huge machines at their disposal, and now they are holding the city and my father hostage." "Wait," interrupted Phineas. "You mean that this isn't Atlantis?" Ashira laughed. "This? This is an outpost that many of us were able to flee to and secure. We need help to retake our city and drive these Kraken men away. That is why our ministers were anxious to know if you were with the mighty Captain Nemo, a surface dweller who has befriended us in the past. In order to get you to the surface, we need to retake the city. This is where our long-range craft are held. The ships we have here are not capable of the journey you desire. So—" She drew closer to Phineas, who could barely control an involuntary trembling. "If you help us, we can help you." Without hesitation, and quickly jumping away from the princess, Phineas shouted a resounding, "Yes!" "Excellent!" clapped the second minister, totally oblivious to Phineas's discomfort. "Now, if you do not mind, we will enter the sacred sanctorum and perform the Mashalari." He and the four other ministers filed out of the room and into an adjacent chamber. Ashira took Phineas by the arm, sending a chill through him, and guided him there as well. The room was amazing, to say the least. It was circular and arched upwards 2 stories high into a dome. The entire surrounding wall was alive with clockwork, illuminated with various shades of blue and green iridescence. As Ashira stopped Phineas in front of the 5 ministers, they began chanting in a language that Phineas did not recognize, but sounded much like the one Ashira had spoken when they first met. His eyes began following the path of the clockwork, studying where each gear intermeshed with the next. When he was about halfway through the room, he heard Ashira say, "Yes," and then one of the ministers asked, "And what say you, Phineas Frakture of New York?" Phineas, totally oblivious as to what was going on, had gone into his own version of autopilot and said, Yes, sure." "Then I now make you Kampatala to Princess Ashira." Ashira quickly wrapped her arms around Phineas's neck and kissed him. "Thank you. You have made me very happy." Phineas, taken by surprise, looked at her with mixed shock, elation, and dread. "I think that I should return to my friends," he finally said. "Yes," Ashira replied. "Go to your friends and tell them the good news. We will make preparations for informing the people."
Phineas wandered back to the rooms in a daze, completely ignorant of his surroundings. He opened the door to William's room and found William and Abigail sitting and talking. They quickly quieted as Phineas entered. Abigail was the first to speak, when she noticed that Phineas wasn't saying anything. "Well, are we getting out of here? What's going on, and what took you so long?" Phineas looked at her, and Abigail could see the terror in his eyes. He swallowed and said the last words she expected to hear. "I think I just got married."
You're listening to Big World Network.